Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are unfortunately going to have to do it a little bit differently because when I filmed this review originally, there was a bit of a camera glitch, one that I've never seen before. The camera just decided to close, and then when I went on and just filmed the rest of the review, I went to edit the two pieces together, the first piece wasn't there, so I lost 25 minutes of first reaction to this beer. But I thought, well, the beer is too good, I don't want to kind of just not say anything about this one, so we'll film it a little bit in retrospect. So I hope this one is still an enjoyable review for you guys watching. So let's see how this one goes. But yeah, for this review, we are going to return to Canada for the first time in what feels like a good little while. We're also going to go to the province of Quebec, which is very well known for its craft beer scene, of course. Many people would say that Quebec is where the Canadian craft beer scene first started to kick off. And we're going to go to another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. These guys are one of a number of new generation breweries that have kicked off over the last few years, and they've built up a very good reputation for themselves. From what people have told me, this brewery is very well known for the different New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs, but they do a number of other styles as well. And for me at least, it's very cool to introduce new Canadian breweries to you here on the channel, and it's quite nice to have Canadian beer being a little bit more accessible to me here in Hong Kong than it was in Europe. But yeah, for this review today, we are going to have a look at a beer style that this brewery is very well known for, one that is very popular at the moment as well, and I can tell you from my taste of this beer, this one is pretty damn good actually. So yeah, for this one, we are going to go to a little place called Lachute, which is out to the west of Montreal in Quebec, and we're going to have a look at my first beer from Brasserie Sir John Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Bravo Tiger. It comes in at 8% ABV, and this one is another New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, this is another one that I picked up from the wonderful Gur Beer in the One Mall in Chimchachui in Kowloon here in Hong Kong, and they've always got a great selection of stuff, you know, Canadian, American, European, whatever. You always get some very interesting stuff in there. They had a number of beers from Sir John, and this is just the one that caught my eye because, you know, I like tigers and big cats, so that's kind of what it comes down to be honest. When you see a number of beers from a brewery you haven't tried anything from before, pick the one that you like the name of, pick a style that you enjoy, or pick the one that's got the coolest artwork. So yeah, we have this one here. But let's crack on then and see what this beer has in store for us. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Brasserie Sir John Brewing. This is the very first time I'm tasting one of their beers on the channel, but there's all the usual social media down there as well. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Canadian playlist along with a number of other things, and that is being added to whenever I get the opportunity. But do check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some really interesting things on the channel these days. So yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Brasserie Sir John Brewing Company. So Brasserie Sir John Brewing Company, because they have both a French name and an English name. Lachute is incidentally about, you know, 85% French speaking, 15% English speaking. So yeah, Brasserie Sir John is maybe the more accurate name for these guys, but they like to be inclusive. So yeah, but Brasserie Sir John Brewing Company is based in Lachute, which, like I said, is out to the west of Montreal in Quebec in Canada, and the company was founded back in 2019. So the four partners behind the company are Serge Dupras, along with his son Joël Dupras, and then there's Maxime Hebert and Francois Nolin in there. I do apologise for any bad French pronunciations. I have forgotten pretty much all of my high school French. But essentially, Joël, Maxime and Francois are teenage friends. They were big beer fanatics, and together they travelled to various rural rural breweries in New England over the years. Then they decided they wanted to try brewing these beers for themselves, which they did, and eventually that hobby got so big that they wanted to kind of take it commercial and make their living that way, and that's what they did. They wanted to bring as well some of this New England hazy IPA culture back to their home county of Argenteuil. So they found a premises for the brewery in the centre of Lachute, and they opened their doors to the public in July of 2019. And over the next few years, they built up a very good reputation for themselves, and they actually had to expand the brewery quite quickly. And this expansion increased their capacity fivefold from what I understand. But they became particularly well known for the New England hazy IPA style, but over the years they have started to develop new recipes and play about with a few different styles as well, which is quite interesting to see. But the name Sir John is taken from the British loyalist military leader, landowner and politician Sir John Johnson, who lived from 1741 until 1830. He was apparently a superintendent of Indian affairs for the northern colonies, and he organised the movement of the four Iroquois nations when they remained loyal to the British Crown during the American Revolution in the 1770s. But he served as a politician in both Lower Canada, which is of course now Quebec, and Upper Canada, which is now Ontario, and then the town of Lac Sir John, very close to Lachute, is named after him, and his manor house can be found in Williamstown in Glengarry County over in Ontario, which is just out to the west of Montreal as well. Montreal is actually very close to the Ontario border, in fact, and there's a very good brewery there too called Wood Brothers that you should check out. But as of April 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 393 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. That number will no doubt continue to increase as time goes on. And yeah, like I say, pretty much well known for their New England hazy IPAs, but they have been playing with a few different styles as well over the last few years. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Brasserie Sir John Brewing Company for the moment. It was a little bit difficult to find information on this brewery. I was trying to search with French keywords and with English keywords, but I couldn't really find out very much about the actual background of the three friends that founded the brewery, like what they used to do. One of them was a graphic designer, and the other ones, they take part and do different things in the brewery. One of them brews, one of them does the business side of things, and one of them does all the kind of social media and marketing and things like that as well. But yeah, the three original founders, Joël, Maxime and Francois, are the ones who are most active in the company, and they do a lot of the driving of the business. But yeah, as I say, that's everything I can tell you about these guys. If you want to know more, check out the brewery website, follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more, pardon me, about all the different beers that these guys have done. But yeah, let's go on and actually talk about the beer itself. So before we actually get the beer out of the fridge again to refilm the tasting, I'll let you have a little look at the artwork on this one. There you can see the Tiger, which attracted me there. Bravo Tiger. This one is a 473 milliliter can, 1 American pint, plain silver top on it there, and it tells you a wee bit about the beer on the side here, but that's all in French, so I can't really understand it. But yeah, the hops in this one are different types of Nelson Sauvin, New Zealand Cascade and Motueka. Nelson Sauvin is of course the kind of OG New Zealand hop, coming in at 16% alpha acid. It gives you this lovely kind of white, green, grapey, gooseberry type flavour. Motueka is of course a bit of a newer hop, 8% alpha acid. It gives you quite a juicy, sharp kind of lime if you like. And then the New Zealand Cascade is quite an interesting one. Cascade of course originated in the US, but hops became, very, what's the word? New Zealand hops became very prominent because there's no natural competitors for hops in New Zealand, so it was the ideal place to experiment and grow them. But the New Zealand version of Cascade I find has a little bit more grapefruit pungency to it and a wee bit more kind of almost piney resin compared to the American one, which for me is a little bit more kind of like datey, sultana-like and stuff like this. So yeah, there's quite a little bit of interesting stuff to think about in this beer. It's got a few different things in it. It's got the cryo and the hop keef stuff in it as well, which are really interesting products which extract the interesting parts of the hops that give you all the flavour. But yeah, that is everything we can really say about the beer just now, so let's just pause the video and I'll get the beer back out the fridge. So I'll catch you guys in just a sec. Alright guys, back to it, but obviously no can opening and no kind of pour this time. But yeah, I will say that when this beer came out, it poured actually with about a half finger of a frothy, perfect white head. It faded away quite quickly, kind of medium-sized bubbles on the surface from what I remember, and it got a little bit foamier the further up the head that you went. But yeah, you can see that this beer poured quite a nice sort of pale colour actually. It's more of like a kind of pineapple or mango juice colour, this one. And I always like comparing New England IPAs to different fruit juices because that's just really what they remind me of, to be honest with you. But yeah, remember the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. You don't often have to care about that when it comes to New England IPAs though, or any type of IPA for that matter. But yeah, the level of haze in this one is pretty much what you would expect from an 8% double IPA. It's not the soupiest and gloopiest of ones, I would say though, but yeah, I think maybe that is partially down to the lighter colour that this one has. But remember, the level of haziness in these beers depends on the oat content, wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use. That can vary from brewery to brewery and beer to beer, and this one really didn't have a lot of carbonation visible in it when it was poured the first time either, even when we put the rest of it in just before we actually tasted it for the first time. But yeah, all in all, the appearance is pretty much what you would expect from the style. So yeah, nothing untoward about this beer in that regard. So let's go and have a second look at the aroma then. So let's do it. Oh yeah, it still smells great actually. So when I first smelled this beer, I actually thought it was quite balanced between the barley malt and the wheat, but the more that you smell of this one, it gives you a little bit more of the oaty character as well. So as I've said in many reviews before, for me there are 6 elements to think about when it comes to New England IPAs. So that would be the kind of farmhousey and yeasty character, and also the rye lean and grainy side of things. Those are a bit more prominent in American brewed New England IPAs, but then you've got wheaty bitiness, oaty creaminess, barley malt bread, and also the sweeter side of things. And most New England IPAs that are brewed outside of America, I think, have taken that approach rather than the more yeasty characteristic that you can find, for example, from Alchemist. But yeah, for me, this one is it's kind of balanced between the oat, the wheat, and the barley malt. But one thing you really need to remember about these beers too is that it depends on where your oat and wheat and things come from, because European oats are a bit more creamy, the American oats are a bit more dry. North American oats, sorry. European wheat is a bit more dry and bitey, whereas North American wheat is a little bit smoother. So yeah, there's things like that to remember. It just varies, and you know, the Australian wheat, New Zealand wheat and stuff like that is going to be quite different. Depends on, you know, soil profiles, water profiles, and all of this kind of stuff, and the particular wheat variety, of course, too. But yeah, to break down the aroma of this beer, it gives you pretty much, pardon me, everything that you would want. Good bit of bready character, quite a little bit of creaminess, nice big floral aromaticity, a bit more spicy and floral actually, the more that you smell of it. Then you've got a lovely fruity note to this one, but what's surprising about it is that it gives you quite a little bit of tropical character, which isn't something that you would necessarily associate with quite a few of the hops in this beer. None of them actually are ones that I would associate with being particularly tropical. But the aroma of this beer, the backbone is of course like a soft, fresh, white bready character. You get little notes of kind of cracker. You get a little note of there's a little bit of cracker in this one. There is a little bit of woody character. I find that you get more and more wood out of this one the more that you smell it and the more you taste it and stuff like that. But yeah, on top of that, lots of kind of fluffy, fresh, and slightly kind of sweet white bread. You do get a little bit of you do definitely get a little bit of a more wheaty, bitey character in the top of your nose at the back. Yeah, and you've also got the oatiness coming out of this one. And like I said with this beer, you'll find with it that the oatiness builds more and more the further that you go with this one. So you get a lot of kind of oaty creaminess out of it. And remember, the oats are quite interesting with New England IPAs because essentially the creamier the oats are in a New England IPA, the fresher it is, the drier the oats are, the older the beer is. It's kind of a very holistic measure, if you like. But when I looked at this earlier, I saw that this one was canned on the 11th of March 2024, and I'm drinking this one for you on like the 23rd of April 2024. So yeah, we're drinking this beer just over a month old, so it's in pretty damn good condition, and that's quite an impressive turnaround when you consider this beer has pretty much come around to the other side of the world. So happy enough with that. But yeah, the oaty character in this beer is quite nice and creamy. You do get a very slight touch of dryness out of this one, but there's also a wee bit of that kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sweetness coming out of this beer, and a wee bit of biscuit too. And when this one, when this one is like 8% ABV, you would expect a little bit of that kind of sweetness to come out of it. So yeah, for sure, this one is giving you everything you'd expect. But like I say, I get a bit more woodiness and stuff like that out of this one, and it's almost got a wee bit of like a Skittles type quality to it in the middle of the nose too, and that's probably from the yeast. I've noticed that with a few New England IPAs, and there's one particular yeast that does it. I don't know if it's the WLP6 actually that gives you that sort of skittly type note, but I'm certainly getting that in here. Yeah, so on the the hoppy side of this beer, I think we've said everything we need to about the malty and yeasty side of this one. The green component's quite nice in this, very, very bright. And as I've explained in many reviews before, there's 3 different kinds of hoppings that you can do with an IPA. You've got early addition hopping, which takes place within the first hour of the wort boil. That gives you mainly bitterness, but it also it mainly gives you bitterness, and that gives you a big kind of deeper, danker green component to your beer. You've got late addition hopping, which takes place within the last half hour of the wort boil. That gives you a little bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour aroma, and it gives you a brighter green component. But then you've got dry hopping as well, which takes place after the wort boil is complete. That's all about flavour and aroma, and again, it gives you a very bright green component. So New England IPAs tend to rely on late addition and dry hopping. West Coast IPAs use all 3, which is why West Coast IPAs are more bitter and deeper and danker, whereas New England IPAs are a little bit brighter and stuff like this. So yeah, that's one thing to keep in mind. But the green component in this beer, for me, there's a little touch of earthiness. You do get that little bit of woodiness as well, which I think is going to come from the malt and the yeast. So yeah, a little bit of earthiness, a little bit of herbal character. And then yeah, you've got quite a nice little bit of like bright floral aromaticity coming out of this one. Good wee bit of zesty grassiness as well. And yeah, the way all of that just pieces together, I think, is really, really nice in this one. The green component's very bright, very inviting, and that's what you want from these New England IPAs. You want them to be like quite fresh and things like that. Getting a bit of a dry throat with this. I'm looking forward to tasting it again. So yeah, don't think we really need to say anything more on the green component of this one. So let's go and have a wee look at the fruity side of things then. And like I said, the fruity side of this beer is where it shows some really kind of unusual characteristics that you might not expect, to be honest with you. So the fruity side of this beer, this one, it has a little bit of a kind of peachy, mangoey, and apricot-y note coming out of it. And like I say, that's not something you'd really associate with the Nelson Sauvin or the Motueka. But and I don't think with the New Zealand version of Cascade either. But certainly with this one, you do get some of that kind of green grapey gooseberry note that you expect of the Nelson Sauvin. And you also get quite a bit of that zesty limey character that you would expect of the Motueka. So yeah, very, very interesting from that perspective too, I would say. Yeah, I think on that side of things, it's knocking this over nearly. Yeah, there's a lot of what you would expect But yeah, I'm also getting kind of like oily pears and a wee bit of grapefruit, and that's kind of what I would expect from the New Zealand Cascade. But the thing, when you first take in that aroma, it really does give you quite a little bit of like peach, apricot, mango and stuff. There's some really interesting stuff from that particular perspective. So yeah, really interesting beer, this one, from the aroma side of things. So as I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think it's about time that we do our second tasting of this one. So yeah, let's have a taste of this then and see what it's all about. I'm very, very curious about this. So yeah, a second tasting this one, the Bravo Tiger, an 8% New England double IPA from Brasserie Sir John Brewing in Lachute, Quebec, near Montreal in Canada. Slange, skål, cheers, santé. So yeah, like I said earlier, the first thing you're going to notice about this beer is the mouthfeel. It's very smooth, very creamy, and just very, very slightly oily at the same time. Like the way that this beer pieces together is really, really interesting. Yeah, I do like that about this one. That's one of the first things that stands out with this beer for me. It's not quite as floral as I remember it from the first taste, but what you will notice about this beer too is that it has this almost kind of like sake rice type sweetness that lingers there in the middle of the palate too. So yeah, there are quite a few quirky wee things, pardon me, about this beer that really do stand out. Yeah, let's just break this beer down actually and describe it more in depth. But as I say, it's very soft, creamy, very smooth New England IPA. That's what really sticks out about this one for me. Yeah, on the middle third of the palate then, we should always start there. The backbone of this beer is a lovely kind of smooth, fresh white bready bread crust there, but it is actually very, very soft. As you move further forward on that middle third of your palate, you get a little touch of woodiness in there, and I think the woodiness becomes more and more prominent the further into the aftertaste that you go with this beer. But then on top of that, you get a very light sort of smattering of Jacob's cream cracker. I'm not sure how good a tasting note that is for Canadians or Quebecers watching this video, but yeah, that's what I get. Above that, you get a nice kind of white bready layer to this one, and the white bread is quite interesting because it feels light and airy, but it still has a good little bit of density to it and a wee bit of sweetness. So you get that, but potentially between the cracker and that white bready layer, there's maybe just a little bit of a slightly more dense and sweet brown bread in there. So yeah, the way all of that goes together, I think, is quite interesting. The malty base in this beer really is interesting, but above that white bready layer that I was talking about, you can feel the wheaty character coming out of the beer as well. So the wheat in this beer is actually quite smooth, but it does show you a little bit more bitiness as you go further back. There's a bit more bitiness on the back of that middle third of the palate in comparison to the front third of your palate. So yeah, you've got that lovely smooth and very slightly bitey, dense, wheaty white bready character coming out of this one. And then above that, you get the oats. And like I said, if you go down that middle line of your tongue, you get the really dense side of the oats, and you can feel them just being really nice and creamy. And as you move out toward the edges of your palate there, they show you the oats just show you that little bit more dryness, actually, which I do quite like as well. So yeah, a good little bit of dense creaminess in there, a little bit of dryness, but then in the dead center of your palate, you have a wee bit more of a kind of sweet McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing, and that's the alcohol coming out of the beer. And just as you move out from that, there's a very slight, McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing with this one. These are all things you'd expect of the style, of course. These are things we've seen before, but this one is quite striking just because of like how smooth it is actually. Yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the middle third of your palate. So let's go to the back third of your palate then. So, border region of that middle, between middle and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of the brown bread in the base, the white bread on top, and a wee touch of the more bitey wheat there. But as I've often said, sweeter flavours come out further forward on your palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. Just bear that in mind. But yeah, the backbone of the beer, you've got that soft, kind of bread crusty character in there. But you can feel it is just that little bit drier, of course. Then above that, you've got the Jacob's cream cracker. You can feel the brown bready layer, which is a little bit more light and airy. It still has a wee bit of sweetness to it. Then you've got the white bready layer above that, which is a lot taller, lighter and more airy, and it still has a wee bit of sweetness. And you can feel the, you can feel the more kind of bitey, wheaty character coming out of this one as well, which I do really quite like. Yeah, the bitey wheatiness there lingers into the aftertaste a wee bit as well. You do get a wee bit more kind of floral bitterness out of this beer into the aftertaste, but you also get that wee bit of wheaty bitiness. It does show you a bit more of that the more that you drink into it. And remember, this is a second tasting as well. This is not my first tasting of this one, so these are actually slightly longer observations with the beer than they might appear. Yeah, so on top of all of that, on the back third of the palate, you start to get the yeasty side of the beer. So the yeasty side of this beer for me, in the centre you can feel that dense, slightly brown bready character, quite sweet, and then around that you've got a more kind of airy light white bready character, and then you've got some bread crusty notes around the edge of that. But like I say, all of that sits on top of the all of that sits on top of the back third of your palate there, and that's quite nice. The yeasty character of this beer does show itself a little bit more the further into the aftertaste that you go, and like I say, you get a wee bit more of a kind of woodiness coming out of this beer too, which is quite nice. And definitely back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is just that little bit taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, let's go on and talk about the green component in this one then. Let's do that. So yeah, green component in this one, as I say, you get a little bit more bitterness out of this beer the more that you drink of it, that's for sure. So on the in the back corners of your palate, you do get a little touch of earthiness out of this one, and I think that's most likely to come from the New Zealand Cascade. I think we can safely say that. But as you move further forward, you've got a little bit of herbal character, and then as you push further forward beyond that, you get a little touch of like piney resin in there, but it becomes more floral and spicy as you reach the front corners of your tongue. But round the front curve of your palate, it's definitely a little bit lighter and more grassy, and has a wee touch of it has a wee touch of zestiness to it as well. So yeah, I like that about this one. I don't think we need to say anything more about the green component. We've covered that quite well. But let's look at the front third of your palate then. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of kind of bready build up in there. You can feel there's the brown bread in the base, the white bread on top, then a wee bit of that wheaty bitiness there, and then the base of the front third of your palate, you've got the kind of smooth bread crust, you've got a wee bit of the cracker, the brown bread and the white bread, and then above that you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll the way out of the beer. And at this point we can switch back to the second part of the original thing that I filmed before the camera, or just after the camera had the glitch. So we'll leave it there for this and we'll cut back to my original reaction. There we go. Sorry about the edit there, guys. Camera just decided it was going to stop. So, yeah, there we are. But yeah, we were just about to talk about the fruity side of this beer then, and that oily bubble there. So if you go to the back of that front third of your palate, you get a really nice little bit of quite strong grapefruit actually, and that's going to come from the Cascade in this one, and that lingers there into the aftertaste. But as you move further forward on that front third of your palate, you get a wee bit more of that datey kind of sultana, peary sort of thing. But as you reach the kind of front, as you reach the kind of middle of that front third of your palate, there is a little touch of an almost like pineapple-y and apricot-y note out of this one, which, like I say, I wouldn't have expected from any of the hops in this particular beer, but it comes out nonetheless. But yeah, as you move into the front half of the front third of your tongue with this beer, it's all about the Nelson Sauvin. You've got that kind of soft white green grapey character underneath there, but it's quite oily, as I'd say. It's quite distinctive. You know, Nelson Sauvin is a very, very distinctive hop if you're into your craft beers. You absolutely get that in this one. But yeah, on top of that, you get that kind of stronger, more juicy, quite punchy, limey character, and that is the Motueka. But yeah, that grapefruity note, which I suspect is from the New Zealand Cascade in this one, really does linger there into the aftertaste. So that's pretty interesting with this. It's not something you'd normally associate too much with the hops in this, but it's been a long time since I've had New Zealand Cascade. Of course, most of it comes from the States. But yeah, let's say with this beer, when you actually take the liquid in, you do almost get like a little bit of a peachy sharpness there when you actually swallow the liquid, and then yeah, a wee bit of like a juicy mango or something into the aftertaste as well, which, like I say, I wouldn't have expected from any of the hops that are in this one. Could be again some of the yeasty flavour, but yeah, all in all, very quirky beer in that regard, and I do like it, so quite happy with that. Yeah, I think that's everything we really need to say about the fruity side of things. It gets really zesty into the aftertaste as well. But yeah, on the flavour, that's everything. Let's go to the mouthfeel then, just to round off this review. So for me, as I've said, this beer is quite a soft New England IPA. Very soft, quite creamy, has a wee bit of oiliness to it as well, and I really like, as I say, I really like how all of that pieces together. Yeah, the way that that goes about its business, I think, is very, very nice. So yeah, soft, creamy, but slightly oily in a sense. In terms of IBUs, I think this one is a fairly standard, like 30 IBU. I wouldn't be surprised if it's slightly more at 40. I do get a wee bit of a lingering bitterness out of this one, and a wee touch of that piney resin and floral spice. So yeah, I do like that about this one. But yeah, that sort of floral spice and things like that are in there, it's in there, that's really, really interesting. So yeah, wee bit of lingering bitterness in there. The malt base has a wee bit of dryness underneath, smoothness in the middle, a bit of creaminess, and a very slight oily sweetness on top. And then yeah, you've got some really nice fruity character to this one. Bit of grapefruit, but yeah, quite a bit of oily gooseberry, like I said, and a wee bit of that more zesty lime from the Motueka as well. But all in all, beautiful New England double IPA, this one. And if this is a benchmark or a guide to what the other Sir John beers are like, then you can see why this brewery have gained a lot of traction, especially during the haze craze. So I'm going to say thumbs up to them, and I hope that I can try a few different styles from them going forward. It'd be cool to see their take on a West Coast IPA or a black IPA, or even something bigger and more malty would be quite interesting as well. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This was the Bravo Tiger 8% New England Hazy, Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA, from Brasserie Sir John Brewing, whatever you want to call them, in Lachute, Argenteuil, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, out to the west of Montreal in Quebec in Canada. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Sir John, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the future when I found some of their beers. But yeah, thank you for watching. Check out my social media, check out theirs, check out my Canadian beer tubing colleagues, and I will see you guys again later. Slàinte, skål, and cheers. Santé, merci.